God will direct you, and you will do well in this space. uThixo anisikelele kakhulu. Another thing that I want to say before we can first listen to our speaker of today. People who are here, all of you, this is what I'm going to ask from you. I want to ask you to leave your names. I think others are doing that. Please leave your names in the chat room. Your names and the name of your churches and your email addresses. Please kindly do so. Leave your names, the name of your churches, and your email addresses. Do that for all of us, and we'll really, really appreciate it. Without wasting any time, Mr. Ashley Sekel, I think you are here. He's the first person who's going to present to us. He is going to. We are also live. Pardon me. I think we are live on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, and I think we are also on YouTube. If you are not there, we should be there soon. But we are here, and then also we are live on Facebook. Our speaker for today, the first seminar, is Advocate Ashley Sekel. He will be attending to the matter of social justice and the youth. Mr. Ashley, thank you very much for availing yourself. I know when we spoke earlier, I think you were driving from the north. You were driving from Pulukwani, and I thank God that He granted you traveling mercies. If you are here, thank you for the opportunity that you are giving us to listen to you, and also for allowing yourself to come and minister unto these wonderful leaders of TOC. May God bless you. After Ashley's presentation, we are going to have the last 30 minutes. We will have question and answers. If you want to ask questions, you will participate, we will engage. And if not, we will close up our presentation of the night, and then we will meet again on this platform same time. May God kindly bless you. Mr. Sekel, over to you, my good sir.
Mfundisi, thank you so much. Please confirm that I am audible.
You are audible, my good sir. You are audible.
Thank you so much, Mfundisi. I see you looking very nice, Lapa, and wearing your tie. I also thought of wearing a tie, but I was afraid that maybe the saints will think that I was worshiping on a Sunday. So I figured, no, let me not put it on. But thank you so much for the invitation. Also for the opportunity to be thrown under the bus, being the first presenter, it would have been nicer to maybe engage with the saints after I've heard how other presenters were going to facilitate these discussions. But be that as it may, we are eternally grateful to God for the opportunity to have this discussion. I'm going to try my level best, brothers and sisters, to be quite interactive in our discourse this evening. And so I would greatly appreciate, that we do unmute and raise our hands and share our thoughts on some of these subject matters. We may not necessarily have to wait until the very end. Thank you so much for taking the time out, everybody. I know we're all busy. We've got a whole lot of things that we could be busy with, but we've taken some time to be part of this session. As Mfundisi has said, my name is Ashley. Some know me as Zwelihle. My surname is Sekel. If you can't pronounce it, it's okay. It will not be asked as one of the questions in your curriculum, I can imagine. So you don't really have to focus much on that. I am a legal practitioner. I am been in practice for a very, very long while. I hold an LLB and I also hold a master's degree in international commercial law. I have a keen interest and passion in preaching. I've been preaching for a great deal of my life right now. And I think that's where my passion really lies. So I often say that I am a full-time preacher man and a part-time legal practitioner. The subject matter that we're going to be discussing this evening, Mfundisi and I we were invited, in fact, at a youth gathering a couple of weeks ago. I think it was an inter-district gathering in Mpumalanga, and I was given a very, very difficult topic to tackle. And the title said, "No Justice, No God." That's what the title said. And it was a very, very difficult topic to present on. So Mfundisi, when he now calls me and he says, look, I want you to go and give the same presentation to the SYL class. I'm like, hey, Mfundisi, you saw almost how I struggled there. But hopefully the people on this platform can be as much interactive as the young people were there. And let's ask even the difficult questions. Let's create that platform where we can ask the difficult questions. I wish, usually they'll say, I don't have all the answers. But in this instance, actually don't have the answers. And you will see, hence I'm going to be more of a facilitator more than anything else. Maybe before we jump into our discourse, I'm going to invite us wherever we are to close our eyes and join me for a short word of prayer. Our eyes are closed and we are praying. Dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this opportunity, dear God, to ponder upon pertinent issues, dear God. You have allowed us this opportunity to come and discuss, the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to also unlearn, dear God. And we ask, dear God, this discourse that we're going to be having this evening might not just be one of those where we have had a meeting, we have discussed these issues, and we jump on to the next thing, but rather may it inspire us to view things differently. May it inspire us to become more inquisitive. May it inspire us to want to seek your face even the more, dear God. And when all is said and done, dear God, our humble prayer is that may this discourse and whatever is going to be discussed here bring us much, much closer to you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Maybe as a point of departure, I'm going to read from the book of Isaiah chapter 56, verse number 1. Isaiah chapter 56, verse number 1. Thus saith the Lord, keep ye judgment and do justice, which is where we are mainly going to focus on. Keep ye and do justice, says the word of God. Why? For my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness needs to be revealed. And yeah, that's Dr. Justice Mongwe on our on the screen for those of you that can see. Certainly the Bible is not saying that we should do him, but nor am I going to be presenting on him as a person, but I just thought it quite interesting, when I was preparing for this title that I share this lovely, lovely, lovely picture of justice, this smiling, radiant picture of justice, because whilst I was busy re-preparing, going over my notes at the last presentation that I shared, and justice is quite an elusive term. What one might define as justice might differ to what the next person might define as justice. And you'd actually be surprised to learn that in this current convocation with over 63 people in it, we have different views on justice. And another thing that I've also noted is that we somehow can easily talk justice, but we often struggle to implement it, even our own ideas and views of what justice might be. And it goes without saying that our church has found itself in recent times and even in past times with quite controversial matters where we may have been seen as perpetuating a notion of injustice as opposed to being a people that are pro-justice, whatever you might define it to be. And it would be quite interesting to learn what, you view justice to be. As a lawyer, justice is determined by every case. It depends. What am I currently working on? And what is just in this matter? I'm a corporate and commercial lawyer. Most of my work involves, structuring transactions and deals and negotiations, drafting complicated and complex agreements. And usually at that point in time, what is just for me is to be able to execute what my client has instructed me or is paying me, to to sort of like assist him or her or it in the event that it's a company, which mostly happens, to have this idea or this view that a client wants to gain from this relationship materialize, both in writing, as in the form of a legal instrument, which would be the contract that I would have drafted, and also practically, meaning that the document must become enforceable. So at two levels, you know, when a client comes to me and says to me, I need you to do X, Y, Z for me, justice for me is going to have all sort of different definitions. And then post the fact, say now I have drafted an agreement, and you know, you put all these fancy things in an agreement. There's a breach clause, there's an arbitration clause, and all of these things, that what happens in the event that one does not perform their obligations as they've undertaken to perform, as at the time that we're negotiating, up until the time that, you know, this piece of paper was signed, and then suddenly the agreement has been signed, but somebody now reneges on that agreement. What then happens at that point in time? So justice for me is what one would know as a principle of pacta sunt servanda, which is every agreement must be honored. You know, that for me is, you have made an undertaking, you need to honor that agreement, failing which we will refer this matter to an arbitrator or to a presiding officer in a formal court of law to have this agreement enforced and to compel you to perform your obligations in accordance with that. That's something that would happen in a commercial setup. You move into a different arena. Somebody comes through and says, listen, you are known as a criminal practitioner. I have now been accused of committing a crime that I have not committed. What must then happen? You know, justice for me in this instance, as a criminal defense lawyer, which I shared, you know, when we're in Mpumalanga, I actually had an incident of that nature, whereby there was a Seventh-day Adventist Uber driver. I don't know, some of you may have heard about him, but this Uber driver happens on one day. He is picking up a child at a school. Well, no, he goes to drop off a child at a school. So he wakes up, normal day, Uber driver. Yes, driver Umchita is doing his thing, and then he receives a trip request. Kona ingane ekfanele iyodropwa eskoleni, is during exam time. He goes and drops this kid off at Edenvale High School, and when he drops the kid off, he exits the school. As he exits the school, so this all happened, I think, in 2018 or 2019. As he exits the school, there is a convoy of about 3 or 4 stolen vehicles that is packed with heavily armed men who are entering the school at that point. So Yena, he is leaving. This convoy of 4 people are entering the school. And before he knows it, or unbeknown to him, there's a full-on robbery that is happening at this school, because these armed men somehow received a tip-off that these school kids were going on a swimming trip, and they had collected over R1 million in funds. I'm just wondering, what type of a school would this be, or what swimming trip is this? Are they going to be swimming in gold or what? But these men received that information, and so they go to rob the school. This Seventh-day Adventist Uber driver is exiting the school as these guys are coming in. But then he receives another Uber request, taking him back to the same school by a parent who now says, because the boy that he was going to drop off is writing. Now he receives a trip from a lady that he now has to go and collect her daughter, who's now finished writing. So because he's still within the vicinity,
recording in progress,
that trip appears on his app, accepts the trip, makes a U-turn, and returns to the school. When he gets back to the school, somebody has pressed the panic button. Armed response. So the community armed response is at the school. The police are there at the school. Some of you may have seen those videos. Otherwise, you can go and Google the Edenvale High School 2019 or 2018 robbery, because these videos were circulated. There is a full-on fight now happening between the cops, the armed response, and this fully armed and heavily armed man. So he gets inside the school. He doesn't realize what is going on. Before he could even think upon what was going on, he hears gunshots. Next thing, there's about 5 guys running towards his vehicle. One points a gun at the driver's seat and causes him to open his vehicle. Jumps into the car. 5 other guys are jumping into the car. Others you can see in the video, they are literally running after his car to try and get in there as a means of escaping this warfare that is now currently happening with the cops and the armed response. And 2 guys are running towards his vehicle. One cop is aiming towards the driver of this vehicle because he's now been instructed to drive away fast. So as he's busy accelerating, a cop can see that, no, man, these guys are getting away and they're using this vehicle to get away. He's aiming for this Uber driver, the Seventh-day Adventist Uber driver. The intention is to incapacitate him from continuing to drive off. And so he's aiming for this guy. But I don't know whether you would say luckily, and when we discuss issues of justice, or unluckily, 2 of these guys who are running, one of them takes the bullet that was meant for our Seventh-day Adventist Uber driver, and he's shot dead and he dies on the scene. Another guy is also shot. A policeman is shot in the shootout, but from the suspects, 2 of them are dead. One policeman is injured. And these guys have just managed to steal a couple of thousands of rands. They cause the Uber driver to drive them to an area in Johannesburg called Rosettenville, where he drops them off there in Rosettenville. And, I don't know whether these gangsters had a sense of gratitude or what's or not, but they leave a very small amount of money that they just dumped on his chair, and in the seat, on his vehicle seat. I think the amount just turned out to be, I think, just about 300, if not 500 rand thereabout. Mr. Uber driver phones his friend and he says, listen, I've just been hijacked. I was supposed to pick up a child. The trip is still on even now. And I got hijacked. I've dropped these guys off in Rosettenville. I just want you to know, like, I'm confused. What do I do? I'm actually, so he asked him, where you at? He says, no, I'm actually driving towards Edenvale police station because I'm going back to Edenvale to go and report the matter. The friend advises him and says, listen, this matter is currently all over the news, the MEC and what's on it. It's everywhere. Whatever news channel that you tend to, this matter is everywhere. So I wouldn't advise you to drive back to Edenvale because you might then get arrested on the way. So what you need to do is that go and hand yourself over at the nearest police station so that you are not getting arrested, but you're handing yourself over and you're explaining that this is what just happened. He says, okay, that makes sense. Let me go and report the matter. So he goes to John Foster, which is Johannesburg Central Police Station. He reports the matter. This money that was left in his car, he takes an A4 paper because he doesn't want to leave his fingerprints on it. He wraps that and then he hands it over to the police. He says to them, look, the Uber trip that took me to the school is still live. I've not ended it because once I exit the app, I no longer have communication with the person that called me to come to that school. The cop said to him, no, don't worry, man, you can end it. The specialized unit from Edenvale has been contacted. It's a big matter. They're going to come and take you from here. Just explain to them what happened and what's on the interview you. I sharp Mchita says, okay, that's okay. I'll do that. But before he ends his Uber trip, he takes a couple of screenshots of his communications with the parent that had called for him to come and pick this child up. The specialized unit comes, picks him up from John Foster. They travel with him. They take him to Edenvale police station. Boom. The next thing, news headline, Uber driver amongst those arrested for Edenvale robbery with aggravating circumstances. 2 murders are involved, 1 attempted murder for the cop. Amongst those is an Uber driver. So Seventh-day Adventist Uber driver. So he comes now. I mean, this Uber driver is at that point in time represented by legal aid. I only got to know him later on, but he runs his trial. I think he gets bail. He's the only one of all those that had been arrested. I think 4 other guys had been caught. He's the only one that makes bail. The investigating officer says, save for the fact that his vehicle was used as a getaway vehicle, I have nothing linking him to the crime. The who is this here? They do forensics on the cell phone devices of all those that have been arrested. They easily link them up through communications and what's or not. Uber driver's phone is taken in, no link whatsoever. He's never communicated with these guys before, and nothing of that nature. Another link that the cops had on these guys was that they all arrived in stolen vehicles. All the vehicles that they came with, all of them were stolen, and none of them had number plates on. The Uber driver was the only guy who was at the school there with a vehicle in his name and a vehicle with number plates. So he makes it. He gets bail. Trial runs for about 2 years. 2021. He's of the view, well, nothing is going to happen to me, all of this evidence, there's nothing linking him to the crime. He goes on the day to hear the verdict. The judge, or an acting judge at that time, finds the Uber guy guilty, links him to the crime by arguing that if he weren't a part of this plan to go and rob the school, why would they have left money in his vehicle? He then sentences him to 2 life terms for the murder of the 2 criminals that were killed. It's a doctrine called common purpose that the courts rely on to impute, even if it's a criminal that was killed, that death is then treated as murder, but is imputed on his co-accused by virtue of arguing that they ought to have foreseen that in robbing a school, there was going to be a shootout and that somebody would have been killed. So that whole, you guys would have remembered that the Oscar Pistorius case, dolus eventualis and dolus indirectus, indirect intention, and intention with the causa and what's or not. So he gets 2 life terms. He gets 15 years for attempted murder for the policeman, and he gets 10 years for armed robbery with aggravating circumstances. All of this is the doctrine of common purpose that is pulling him in. Justice for a guy like that is something completely different. Justice for him says, I have been accused of something that I know I didn't do. And here I am, I'm about to spend the rest of my life in prison for something that I did not do. And I think he spent, by the time that, I looked at this guy's file, I had his friends talk about it after he'd been sentenced. And I decided, let me move away from this commercial thing and zoom into this criminal matter and see if I can assist this guy on a pro bono basis. We managed to get him out, I think, last year, October, and we had a nice reported judgment, in respect of his matter. But at that point in time, he'd spent 2 years in prison for something that he didn't do. Justice for him is something completely different. Justice is to say, I have been accused of a wrongdoing that I did not commit, and I need somebody to come through and assist me. Justice must be delivered. It must be known that I did not commit this evil, and I do not have to be in prison. That's justice for him. So we've looked at it from a contractual perspective. We've looked at it from somebody who has been wrongfully accused. Then we look at it from a prosecutorial point of view, wherein somebody has done wrong. Somebody has really, really done wrong. And they, or at least the victim against whom this wrong has been done is crying for justice. And we find a lot of that, not only in the Bible, even in today's world, where in our church we are dealing with very serious issues. Somebody would come out and say, I was raped by a pastor. I have a married elder that is making my life extremely difficult. My marriage was broken by a youth leader who holds a qualification in SYL. And the question is, what role does our church have to play when somebody like that comes out seeking for justice? How do we define justice in such a scenario? And we have had, and it just so happens that our church has of late experienced matters that have caused us to question whether this is a church that stands for that which is just, or it is a church that shies away from justice. Some of the questions that we get popping up of late: who do we allow to influence us in our church setup? We have men and women who have no integrity whatsoever. Men and women who have been declared as delinquent directors in entities, men and women who have been convicted of perpetuating fraud in the outside world, men and women who have a history of being abusive, who have protection orders against them, men and women who cannot be trusted with finances out there because they have been convicted, fraud, all sort of things. But somewhere, somehow, in our church, they still find a gap to be elevated as those that are influential and those that should be listened to. In fact, it's almost as though we have reached a level of the more sinful you are, and the more you are bold in asserting your sin publicly, the more you should be given room to influence and to speak to us and to be on the higher podiums. And those that are watching from a distance then begin to ask themselves, is this a church that one should trust when it comes to matters of enforcing justice? Or is this a church that one should shy away from? Let's maybe bring it a little bit closer home. What is justice? You see somebody next door getting raped, and I want to use the gross and the gruesome type of examples because I want us to have an honest discussion, so that even when we begin to open up here and questions are asked, we must not shy away, from the sensitive and the difficult topics. You hear that your neighbor's daughter has been raped, and you begin to toy, you are going there and you are marching nasenkonzweni. It's a young youth that is being accused of raping your neighbor's daughter, who also happens to be SDA, and you are marching your lungs out there. Justice must prevail. He must not get bail. He must, be incarcerated for time immemorial or eternity. The key must be thrown away. We've got this scourge of gender-based violence. There is no room for such a person in society. And I'm going to watch at every corner to make sure that there are no shortcuts and nothing, is done that is going to stand in the way of justice being delivered. You have done a horrendous evil, and you must be held accountable for that horrendous evil, right? And we look at you and we're like, wow, we love the zeal, we love the energy, and we love how you are standing for justice, and you are calling for this young man, to have his day in court, and for justice to prevail at the end of the day. And we know that you've probably even made the conclusion that justice means that he must probably go away for the rest of his life in prison, right? Then the tables turn. This young man that is being accused of rape is your son. This young man that is being accused of rape is your nephew. what must then happen at that point in time? Suddenly, your view of justice then becomes distorted. Suddenly, you are wanting, the same energy that you have, it remains, but it's channeled towards saving your son. It's very easy when we discuss these matters from a distance, but when they come closer to home, then nobody is comfortable to engage in matters of this nature. We've got 69 people on this platform. The amount of criminals that we have in our families, that we know very, very well that these ones here, if they were to be sent to prison for a while and get some rehabilitation, this world would be a better place. But none of us will ever raise up their hand and say, no, or my uncle did 1, 2, 3, or my husband did 1, 2, 3. Why? Because now it's your husband, it's your child. That's when these discussions begin to become a little bit more uncomfortable. We are very much against gender-based violence until we learn that the man that was actually beating up his wife or his partner or his children is actually Pastor Maichu. And Pastor Maichu and I mean, this is my friend. He actually invited me to come and address his SYL. What do I do then? My energy, if he were a stranger, would have been, I would write articles. I would stand up there and, stand on the podiums and call for justice to be delivered. But suddenly, because umfundisi, that I know and we are friends, I need to compromise on my approach. What then is justice? And I'm intentionally putting the questions to everybody that is here because the answers need to come from us. We need to define what justice is. There's a philosopher who argued, and he said that justice is the maximization of utility for the greater good. The maximization of utility for the greater good. And I asked myself, what does that even mean? There was a case in the United Kingdom many years ago and decades ago. It's the case of the Queen versus I can't remember what that guy's name is, but I'll remind you when I get. I think it was Eduardo or something, but it's an English surname. This chap was a captain of a vessel, right? So he was a captain of a vessel, and it so happened that he set ship and they were sailing, going to wherever that they were going. And suddenly a wave hit the ship and the ship began to sink. On the ship were 4 men, the captain, a gentleman called Mr. Stevens, a young man called Mr. Parker, and another gentleman whose name I cannot really remember, but there were 4 of these guys on that ship. Suddenly the ship is sinking. They jump onto a safety boat. It's a true story, by the way. So they jump onto a safety boat. And they only had 2 tins of what I'm going to call, maybe the South African equivalent would be tinned fish. So they had 2 tins of tinned fish. They knew very well that it's going to be a very long while before they are saved. It's going to be a very, very long while before they are saved. So they decide for the first 4 days that they're not going to eat any food. So they're not going to open these tinned fish. After day number 4, they opened 1 tinned fish. They ate. I think 2 weeks later, they opened the second tin of fish. About 18 days thereafter, there is no food. This young man, Parker, that was in this safety boat with them, was a young guy, not married, no education background. He came from a disjointed family, a guy almost, without any good history and who seemed to not have any promising future if analyzed according to the lens of men's eyes. he had been on this trip, so he set voyage against the advice of his friends. He thought that, you know, because he's going through a hard time, if he goes onto this voyage, he's going to come out a guy that's going to be respected. He's going to be seen as a man and what's or not. Now, unfortunately, he finds himself on this ship. Great. I see Pastor Nkuna has his hand up, and I'll come to you, Manja Mpundisi. This gentleman, now 18 days after, Mr. Parker decides to drink seawater and he falls asleep. The captain of the ship says to the other gentleman, and they'd advised him against drinking seawater, by the way. So now it's affecting him. It's salty and stuff like that. So this man is like falling asleep. They're probably ill and stuff. The captain of the ship says to the other guys, hey, Bafet, it's very, very tough. We're starving. I think we need to cast lots. And we need to vote. One of us needs to be sacrificed here so that we can eat. The one gentleman, Stevens, agrees with the captain. The other guy refuses, says, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. It's just morally, it's wrong. It shouldn't happen. Mr. Parker is sleeping at this point in time. A couple of days go by, and the gentlemen are really starving, Gemanja. Captain comes back and says, this young man must die. This young man needs to go. That other gentleman still says, no, gents, we can't do that. Our captain says, we're not going to listen to you, Tina. Takes a knife, stabs this guy, kills him, cut him up in pieces. Even the gentleman that had initially said, no, we can't do this, begins to feast on Mr. Parker. They begin to feast on Mr. Parker. I think these guys were discovered 25 days after the incident had occurred. And the captain even writes it, you know, in a very interesting way in his diary when he records how they were rescued. He says it was day number 25 when we finally saw a ship arrive just as we were having our breakfast, which is Mr. Parker. Now, obviously, these guys are saved, and they're now standing before a court of law, accused of murder. And the question is asked, what they did, were they right or were they wrong? Justice at that point in time, what does justice dictate? Should these have been, should they be exonerated or should they be incarcerated for the act of murder? They've been out now for 25 days. I think I'm going to pause here for now, Mfundisi. I have, hopefully at this point in time, I've got us thinking and I've got us wondering. And maybe before I pause, I'm going to put a question and I'm going to allow Mfundisi Nkuna to come in there with his question or comment. I'm going to ask you a question. Say you are driving, right? And suddenly you lose control of your vehicle. It's a slippery road, whatever. So something beyond your control happens. You no longer have full control of your vehicle. You are certainly going to be involved in an accident. There are two sides to where this accident is going to end. On the one end, there's 5 people, 5 young people that you can bump into and kill them all on the spot. The other option, and that's where your vehicle is headed, by the way, towards these 5. The other option that you have, in as much as you've lost control of your vehicle, you can still steer your vehicle, but you can only steer it to the left. And to the left-hand side, there is one person that you are certainly going to crash into, and that one person is going to die. What would you do? And I don't know if there's a way of putting up a poll, Lana Mfundisi, maybe as we are taking the question from Mfundisi Nkuna. I want to see if I can put up a poll. I actually want people to vote on this to let me know whether you would go for the 5 or you'd steer the vehicle and kill the one.
Okay, Mfundis, Mr. Segel, if we fumene jail, but if not, I will ask Linda also to assist us with that if we can get a poll. But if you haven't, hopefully it will be here on our screens, then we can be able to vote from there.
I'm not finding it, manje. Mfundisi Nkuna, I saw your hand was up. Was there a question?
Good, sir. Thank you so much. My apologies. I was trying to actually get to my chat box so that I'm able to type something up. But I think we can give others a chance, and then we'll circle back.
Thank you. Money poll of us voting there.
I cannot find it, but it's fine. Let's get guys. I'll get maybe a few volunteers. If somebody can unmute and let me know what option would you exercise. Let me have a couple of hands coming up. You can randomly unmute Lulu.
Yeah, you can. People can raise their hands. Then you can be able to count the hands that are raised and.
Or even better, do you know what we should do?
Yeah.
So there's Cynthia. Cynthia, what would you do?
Good evening. I'll go for one rather than killing 5 people or 5 families. Thank you.
All right. So you'd go for one. And the reason why you would do that is because you think that it's better for you to kill one as opposed to affecting 5 families. That's
Yes,
the reason behind your decision. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can I come in there?
Yes, sir.
You never spoke about if there's an open space where I can crash the car.
Yeah, and yeah, so I didn't. I've given you 2 options. So you can only continue straight into the 5, steer away, and kill the one.
Yeah, the one is better, but killing is that's why we are taking. It's a challenge, but one I will go for the one.
Go for the one. All right. No, Sabonga Matanga. Any other taker? So currently we've got 2 for the one. So the majority is currently saying 1. Florence?
Good evening, everyone. I feel like killing one is better, although it sounds very sad to do it, but killing one person is better because imagine killing 5 people from different families. That's bad.
Okay, so your reasoning is also 1 because you'd rather have 1 family cry as opposed to 5 families crying.
Yes, I feel like that's better.
All right. Does anybody have a different view? Would anybody go for the 5? Nobody. Truth to everybody here. Okay, let me get another, maybe 3 other takers that could maybe give a different reason as to why they would go for the 1. Mobile?
I think it will depend on who the one is, because if it's a family member of mine, definitely I'm taking the 5.
So if it's a family member of yours, then you're definitely going for the 5. So it depends on who the one is.
Yes.
How would you go about
yeah.
So besides it being a family member, what else would make a difference for you to saving the one?
I think most of the time we make this decisions selfishly. If it greatly, I wouldn't forgetting being Christian and all, but most of the time when we make decisions, it depends first.
All right, and would you say that's just, Mobile?
First,
your decision
before the others. Me then. That well, not really. It won't be just, but it will be selfish.
Okay,
So
but you're still going for one, ne? All right. Now I think I got you then, Nobile. The
Ashley,
network was a bit dancing.
Ashley, Ashley,
yeah,
ngicela uxolo man kakhulu. My apologies for what I'm doing, but I just want to send a message out here. Pearl Semenya, the secretary, is here. Everyone who is attending, may you kindly send everything to Pearl's email address, your names, and what I've asked you earlier on, because we are failing to capture you here. Let us be Christian and be honest and just send our names and everything there. Don't add something that is not there. If someone is not here, they are not supposed to be added in by your friends because they're your friends. We are dealing with justice here. We want everything to go according to order. Please send your names and email address to Pearl Semenya. Pearl Semenya, please. Thank you very much.
All right, Sabonga Mpundisi. Thanks, Nobile. Tsiko, Mr. Litolo.
Oh, all right. Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, my leader, I think it's actually logical to go for one instead of five. Yeah, from my side of the way I see things, it's actually logical. That's why most of us go for one instead of five. Thank you.
Okay, I see. Mfundisi.
Good, sir. I think the question you are asking now, it's quite an ethical question, and depending what ethical system one has, that would drive the decision making process. If the five are thugs and young people, and the one is an old lady who can't even cross the road quicker, one is likely to say, the young boys have stronger bones, let me go for them, and save the old lady. It's very circumstantial. If the one that is there is a lady and the five are guys, I'm likely to go for the guys and leave the lady alone. It's very circumstantial. But I think everyone's ethics or everyone's definition of what would be a just decision will be driven by their code of ethics. And if, for example, my ethical foundation, it's a law-based ethics, then at that time there's no time to think about the law, but one would want to justify their decision or act by law. Was it legal for me to do that? Is it illegal for me to do that? So I really think that it's very circumstantial, but at the end of the day, everybody's going to feel bad. They're human after all. There is one my apologies. There is one person in the scriptures who said that it's better for one man to die than for the whole nation to die. So it's really circumstantial. And is it not? And here really, I'm stretching it. I'm really stretching it. Was it not better for Christ to die than for the whole world to die? Who would we save? So it's very circumstantial. One would even argue that actually all of us needed to die, and instead of Christ. So that's my contribution. I know I've not answered you, but I think
and I still want you to answer me for this, because I want to understand what your ethical system is. So what I'm going to do is, we don't make any distinction between the five and the one. So let's say they're all reasonably your average guy, right? All of them. And that's, can you hear me, please?
Can we mute so that we can be able to hear our presenter very well? Let us mute wherever we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So, Mfundisi, please come back then. So we say that they're all the same. We're not making any distinction. So it's 5 versus 1. Who are you going for?
I'll go for the 5.
Why?
They are more in number. I'm not likely to hit all of them.
No. So the 5 are going to die, Mfundisi. All 5 are dying.
Okay. It's an impossible situation. It makes no difference then who I hit. If all five will die, if one will die, it makes no difference who will I will go for. Let's go with the popular view. I'll go for the one, save the five.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna take Utumisho as our last hand on this scenario.
Evening, leadership. I didn't get the scenario quite clearly. I just wanted to know where is the five and where is the one before I can answer.
They're on the road. So you're driving Sugu and you are driving in Midrand. It's storming like terrible. You lose control of your vehicle. You are headed towards 5 people that you are certainly going to kill. But you have an option of steering your vehicle to the left. To your left-hand side is one person who will also die. Do you steer your vehicle to the one or do you continue straight ahead for the 5?
So my left will be my right lane.
You can make it your right lane or your left lane, but there's one person there.
Yeah, remember, when it comes to law, the unlawfulness of something, it can be in many different ways. So when I lose control, does it mean I lose control going to the facing the oncoming traffic, or do I remain on my lane so that at least I know if the 5 are on the oncoming traffic, and if I go to the left, the one is off the road. So before I can make my choice, I need to understand.
So you're preparing a criminal defense here to the extent that you're going to be brought to court for a criminal charge. I don't want us to go there. You've got 2 groups here. You can either kill the 5 or you can kill the 1. Forget about the law, forget about the court, forget about getting arrested. Let's talk about your decision at that point in time. So you've got the power to either kill the 5 or you've got the power to kill the 1. Who are you going for?
The 1.
The 1. Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to put in just maybe, and everybody has answered 1. And I'll see if there's going to be any difference in your answers, ne? Now, initially the example says that you're driving straight, you're going to go into the 5 and they're certainly going to die. Your alternative is to steer the vehicle, but wherever you're going, there's the 1 that is certainly going to die. But now this 1, say you are let's take you out. You're not the driver of the vehicle. You are not in this vehicle. Say you're standing on top of a bridge. You monitor, there's an accident that is about to happen at the bottom of the bridge. Next to you on the bridge is a very, very fat guy who has been eating nonstop since you first saw him. And he happens to be leaning over the bridge. 80% of his body is leaning over the bridge. You see that there's an accident that is about to occur here. There's a vehicle that is about to go and hit 5 people and they're certainly going to die. But there's this fat guy next to you that you can push over, just push him over a little bit. And he will fall in front of this vehicle that is about to crash into 5 people and kill them. He will die, but in his death, he would have saved not only the driver of the vehicle, but the 5 that were going to be hit. Who are you going for in this instance? And I want all those guys that had responded on the 1. Do you save the 5 or do you throw in the 1? I mean, do you save the 1 or do you save the 5? The choice is yours. You can push this guy over the bridge and he's going to save 5 lives. Or you can just stand there and watch that vehicle go and kill 5. Mobile? Cynthia?
I'm sorry, leadership. I wanted to ask Pastor Maichu when he said we must send the names to Pearl, where because the chat box here is closed, we can't send our names. How do we send our names to Pearl? Thank you. I'm not responding to your question. Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, I will
respond because you're one of those that answered 1. Sorry, Mfundisi, go ahead.
No, I'm saying she's saying the box is closed. I will talk to Linda so that we can be able to open it up. And then if it's impossible, but you can send it to Pelsiminga's address, Pelsiminga's email address. That's where you have to send it to. And if you can't do it, I will write it here. But if you can't get it, I will ask Linda to assist us at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move quickly. Cynthia, I would also love you to come back because in the first example, you're saying that you are saving the one. I want to know, now that we've changed it a little bit, would you still save the one or are you saving the 5? Mfundisi, your hand is up.
Thank you. I wanted to check. Can I not make any other decision? Can I not take off my shoe, throw the shoe at the car? Okay. Am I able to do things like that? Or
No,
am I merely,
unfortunately not.
I'm only limited to choosing between the two. Either watch or push the guy over.
Yeah, so watch the 5 die or push the 1 over to die. Because remember, initially you say that you were in any event going to kill the 1.
Yes.
Yeah, so you were always going to kill the 1. So are you still killing the 1 in this instance?
No. In this instance, I'll watch. At least I'm not. I'd watch the 5 die. I'll go and attend the bereavement service or something.
Okay. Sister Florence?
I will also watch because why am I now pushing the fat guy over? Like, happy. Where do I enter? So I'll watch. I will definitely watch.
Okay. Tapelo?
Okay, ngiyabonga mfundisi. Actually, I would like to agree with Mfundisi and the sister here. I'll definitely watch. I can't allow ukuthi ngiphushe umuntu wabantu ngenzanga next. I'll just hope for the best to say uNkulunkulu will intervene in either way.
And in the first example, Tapelo, were you going to kill the 1?
I was definitely going to go for 1, not for the 5.
So now you're not going to kill the 1 because umuntu kaNkulunkulu akayenzanga next. You didn't want to push umuntu kaNkulunkulu. In the first instance, why don't you have the same concern about the 1 ukuthi akayenzanga next?
Well, on the first instance, let's just say I don't know how to put it, but on this one, if I push the fat guy, I will definitely be doing that purpose to say I'm saving the 5. And then on the first instance, they are both on my side, so I might as well just save the 5 and go for the 1 on the left. I mean for the one who I won.
Yes. I don't know. Is that an old hand? I don't know if anyone else has a take on this.
Can I come in, Ash, when you're done?
Sorry?
Can I come in when you are about to close? I've got a different angle.
Okay, all right. I'd love you to come in right away.
Umfundisi nosisi iqiniso ukuthi by standing and not participate is still a choice of killing the 5 because you didn't do anything. You could have saved the 5, but by not doing anything, you're still doing something because you could have saved the 5 by pushing the other person. The greatest challenge with the two things is that either you do or don't, someone dies. So I'm still maintaining the 1 and saving the 5.
So you're throwing the 1 over?
Yes.
Okay, Tumisho, go ahead.
Oh yeah, thanks, Ashley. I think here the difference is that on the first instance, I had a choice to go either for 5 or for 1. But in this instance, I now have a choice to take this 1 out or to let the accident happen. Now remember, here you have an intention to push this person away. But if it is an accident is an accident. It just happens. You have no control over it, and therefore remember, we are obliged to comply, whether by a moral law or our constitution or whatever law is there. And therefore, by pushing someone like Brother Tapelo said, by pushing him away purposely, so you can't do it deliberately. Because now remember, there's intention there. You are not supposed to do that. I would rather let the accident happen and hit those 5.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate these views. Pastor Maichu, I'll come to you now. I just want to address something quickly, Lana, from Uza Mobuhle, who was offended by the terminology that I used. I apologize for that. In fact, it happened in the heat of the moment. I also thought of it after. But the whole idea, I wanted to, to try and steer the conversation a certain way. And I apologize. I shouldn't have used that term, Lapo, Sizamo or Kudzamo. Please accept my profuse apologies. Pastor Maichu, please come in. We're about to close it up there and bring it closer to home.
Okay, my good sir, thank you very much. I think I'm not responding only to what you're saying, but I just want to make all of us to understand. I think we are talking about justice here, and what it means to all of us, and you gave us different scenarios, from the guy who was an Uber driver to the scenario that you have just painted here. And I don't think you want us to try and reshape what you are saying to us. We are trying to make it favor our situations. I don't think you're doing it for that. You were putting a scenario intentionally so to see what we are going to do. Now, when we try to understand if the speed of the car and whatnot, I don't think that's what you wanted. You wanted us to engage and to see. And having said that, if for me personally, if there's one guy on the other side who can be able to be pushed in and then save the 5, I don't want to be philosophical and sound smart. I'm pushing the guy who's alone that's going to save us all. And is our court and deal with it there. But one I don't want to redefine what you are giving us, but I'm going for that one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And I was very, very intentional in the example that I used, and I appreciate the responses that came. Obviously, I did anticipate that we're going to be a bit SDA about them. So Pastor Nkuna's philosophical responses and all of those were anticipated. What does this have to do with justice? This scenario that I've presented. You will note without a doubt that the majority of us has defined justice from a very subjective point of view and not an objective one. What we deem to be just is what will make us feel comfortable after the fact. And in fact, in all of our responses here, so the majority of our responses, everybody that was responding here to the scenario that was put in, that was put in, was trying to, what sort of outcome will make me feel at ease? What sort of outcome would protect me? What sort of outcome? Some of us were even already preparing our criminal, if what happens if I am arrested? How will I feel about it? How far will this thing go in taking me out of my comfort zone? And the chap that defines justice, and some interesting views also came in here, that philosopher that defines justice by saying that it is the maximization of utility for the greater good. For the greater good. So it's almost like it's a funnel type of approach. It's coming from the top, but making sure that wherever else it's going there, it's spreading out and everybody is going to be satisfied by the outcome. But our responses to these two scenarios. So in the first scenario, we went for the one. The reason why we are going for the one is because, I think it will make me feel good knowing that I don't have to watch 5 families cry. I would rather watch one family cry. In the second scenario, I would rather throw over the one. Maybe I've looked at it. There's really nothing much that this guy can contribute to my well-being. But also, how is it going to make me feel to think that there are 5 people that have died, and whereas I could have sacrificed the one. So it seemed to me that all of the responses that were emanating were aimed at protecting us. Now let's talk to unconscious bias when it comes to matters of justice, because if you truly deliberate on these things, they, in this very scenario that we use, you'll realize that we use the same approach even in our day-to-day matters that we are approaching on a day-to-day basis, scenarios that are facing us on a day-to-day basis. So you will get to a point in time whereby you are serving on a board in your local church, and an issue is presented to you that is implicating a fellow board member. And one person put it out there, and we have to be honest in these discussions. Somebody literally said, it depends on who the one is. And that's exactly what is happening in our local churches, conference levels, union levels, GC levels. The question is, who are you? Who is this person that is crying? Who knows you? Where are you coming from? What title do you hold? What benefit have you brought to my life that dictates that I should stand up for the injustice that is currently being perpetuated against you? So when you go into the book of James chapter 2, and then it says that he that offends in one has offended in all. That is James chapter 2, verse number 10. And we hold on to that verse, even as leaders. So we hold on to that verse when we are preaching commandments. Oh, he that is offended in the one by not keeping the Sabbath commandment has offended in all. But go and read the verses that precede verse number 10, verse number 1 to verse number 9. It says that a man comes into your into wherever you are gathered, and he is dressed in such a beautiful attire, and he seems like he's got the degrees, he seems like he's knowledgeable, he's got the connections, and we are very quick to want to take care and elevate this man. We're very quick to want to go and introduce ourselves to this sister who is a powerful CEO in this company. Why? Because justice for us is not determined by what does this mean for the community at large, but it is determined by what does this mean for me. So our approach is often a selfish approach. It is often an approach of, what does this mean for me? What am I going to benefit out of this? So what happens now, because this man is serving with me on this board, and I have confided in this man, I have shared secrets with this guy. Do I have the audacity to now, at this point in time, come and stand up against, notwithstanding that he is representing the 5? So this 5, and now maybe we can go deeper. And I didn't want us to go into it in the example because I wanted to save it for this conclusion. So now, when you look at that 5, right, you've got a 5 that represents debt. You could have a 5 that represents absolute nonsense, a 5 that is completely detached from God and his principles, but you find yourself in a church where leaders and cliques in a church would still go and protect, that 5 and save the 5, not because it is to the greater good, but they fear, what connections am I going to lose? They fear, what will happen to me if I stand for? And then we find ourselves living in a generation where there are people who lack the backbone to stand up for that which is right, because they are concerned as to how will I be able to personally survive, knowing that I have thrown somebody under the bus who operates within my vicinity. That is another angle. And our church leaders, we are going to find ourselves in very call on us to make very hard decisions. Some of us have already even maybe started operating there, where we brush things under the table. Justice for us becomes, it's no longer about what is the greater good, what is the right thing to be done, but it is now an issue of how can I go about in protecting the status quo? Do I want to be the one that will come and stand up against what is already established? Hey, justice for us even becomes has reached a point where we subjectively define it to mean to a certain extent, why must it be me? Because if I come and stand up against this, which I can see clearly, this is a wrong, this ought not to be happening. But if I stand up again, I'm the one that is going to be victimized. This person who is busy doing whatever that we know is not right, you know, whether in terms of the church manual, morally, or whatsoever, he's got access to the funds. You know, he's got access to the opportunities. She's got access to places, you know, where if you called this person out, then you must forget about your career. And this thing affects us even in our different workplaces. It comes into church, and then you end up being stuck with this leadership crisis where nobody is able to stand up for that which is right because they are afraid of what the consequences would be, not to the greater good of the society, but to themselves. That's one angle of also, and I want us to ponder upon these things. And I want to conclude it also with one of my favorite, and this is where the lawyer in me sort of like kicks in. I found a very keen interest in what is known as therapeutic justice, therapeutic jurisprudence. Because say now you have a matter where you are compromised. The church leader has stolen money from the church coffers, and you know very well, you've got access to that information, or you are running this department, you are in a team, and you are the youth leader, your treasury is stealing funds, and you are very much aware of that. And so you decide, now, what do I do here? Do I throw this one here under the bus to save the church? But just as you're about to make the decision, or as you're pondering upon this issue, then you realize, hey, Wanjaman, this is the same brother whom I haven't paid back the money that he borrowed me, or the money that she borrowed me 2 years ago. What must now happen? Do I say, for as long as this guy is not coming to ask for that money, let me keep quiet? Or do I, like the church in Pretoria, go and get our treasury arrested? Foodies, I see your hand is up. I'm going to come back. I'm concluding it now. So whatever will be said here in after is for you. I won't be there. So we have a church that says that the treasury has been stealing money from the church. Somebody was aware, and then they shift, you know, there's a cabinet reshuffle. Just no, let's move them and let's put them at another church, and let's save their dignity. Then you've got Pretoria Central that found out that the treasury was stealing money from the church. And then they went and reported it as a crime. Treasury went, criminal trial, arrested, convicted, incarcerated. And these are matters that are very close home. So I'm using actual examples that we know as a church have happened. What criminals set up, there's been a huge debate as to whether justice should be rehabilitative or it should be retributive. Why do we send people to prison? Do we send people to prison to punish them? Do we send people to prison to correct their ways? When we have to jump in now as Christians, and we've been given the opportunity now to define what justice is to us, how do we then define it? So the story is told of a philosopher, very wise philosopher, who was taking a walk one evening. And as he is walking, he picks up, he notices two strange women. These women are very tall. Like, you know, they look like women had been stacked on top of each. So they were very, very tall. And they were walking towards him. So this philosopher is immediately fearful. And he goes and he hides himself in the bushes because he's fearing these women that are walking towards him. But then these two women then come and sit next to the bushes that he had hidden himself in. And they begin to have a conversation. So they're busy talking generally, they're conversing. As they are busy conversing, a young prince comes running towards them. Blood is gushing from his one ear. He's holding the one ear and there's a lot of blood that is gushing. He runs towards these two women and he says to these women, help me, help me. You have to help me. Then these two women, they say, calm down, calm down. What is it that you seek? And he says, I seek justice. I am here and I seek justice and you must help me. Whilst he's still trying to catch his breath, the women respond, says, calm down, we will certainly help you. For we are lady justices. That is what we are here for, to give justice. You just have to pick which one of us you'd want to deliver the justice on your behalf. What happened firstly? That's what you must tell us. Says, my young brother took out a sword and he cut off my ear. And as he's busy explaining the story, there comes his young brother with a bloodied sword towards these two women. And they say, no, don't worry, we'll be able to assist you. That's what we do. We are lady justices. Just pick which one of us you'd want to assist you. The first one, so he says to them, well, I have to understand what is the difference between the two of you. So then the first one says, well, I am Lady Justice number one. What I will do is that I will call your young brother. I'll ask him why he did what he did. I'll ask him whether he understands the consequences of his actions. I will then implore him to understand the pain that you are feeling. I'll ask him to make a nice helmet for you. So he will help you get your ear stitched. And then I'll ask him to create a nice helmet for you that is going to hide the scar that he has now created. And then I will then convince him to guard your remaining ear jealously for the rest of his life. Says, okay. And what about you, number two? Number two says, Mina, I will give you the punishment that you want. I will not only cut off one of his ear, but I will cut them off both. I'll cut both of them off. I will cut them off so slowly that he feels the pain that you have felt and perhaps even more than you have felt it. And I will make him realize the pain that he has caused you. He will regret ever cutting your ear off. Choose which form of justice you want. So the young man then chooses option number two. His young brother's ear got cut off, both of them. He went through excruciating pain, a punishment of note that he'd never ever experienced before. And when Justice Lady number two was done, the two young men were then said, y'all can go home. The young brother was no longer speaking to the older brother. The older brother was no longer speaking to the young brother. A new form of enmity had been revealed, had been now established, and they walked off together. Now, the philosopher is watching this from the bush happening. Now, when these two young princes had walked off, the second Lady Justice strips off her clothes and turns to Aries, Lady Justice, the lady that you guys see in this court of laws, and says to her, I have done it again. They could not differentiate between you and I. Again, they could not make a distinction between justice and retribution, as he put it. And he strips off his clothes and says, till we meet again, your people cannot make the distinction. So the philosopher then jumps out, walking away. And this lady who had remained the one true justice calls the philosopher and says to him, I know you were there. Were you able to differentiate between the two of us? what true justice is and what false justice is. Are we here as we are in this place today? If we were the ones that were hiding in the bush, would we have been able to make the distinction between the two? Final story as we close off, and then we can have a general discussion. I didn't come with answers like I said. I came here to get you thinking. Very happy to hear your inputs on the subject matter. And maybe this story, some of you may have heard it. It's a classic story of justice that you get in any most seminars that deal that wish to tackle this subject. It's a very funny, it almost sounds like a children's story. Pancho and 00. This 00 lives in a galaxy somewhere. Pancho is living in another galaxy. They meet up through an intergalactic app and they are busy talking. They get to know each other. One day, Pancho decides that he's going to visit 00's galaxy to go and meet him in person. So as they are in this galaxy, 00 is busy taking Pancho around, is showing him, his galaxy, is showing it off and what's or not. Suddenly, as Pancho is busy walking around, there is a little hole that he falls into. And he knocks on the head of a little man that was living in that small little hole. Because he lost concentration as 00 was busy showing him around. This little man then comes out of this hole and he is angry. He is fuming. This man is extremely angry. He's disgusted by what Pancho has done. You have knocked on my head and I am hurt. I'm feeling pain. Before Pancho could even engage this little man, suddenly two robotic things of a police nature rock up. They take out a little plate. They point it to the direction of the little man. They grab Pancho by his hands and they grab the little man. They whisk them off into a cell somewhere. One robot then comes back, takes out a little plate, points it towards this little man. The little man goes to Pancho, grabs Pancho, and boom, beheads him. Terribly, almost cracking Pancho's skull. Pancho is confused. What is going on here? What on earth is happening? This robot then turns to Pancho and shows him a little plate. On that plate reads, you have the opportunity to obtain perfect justice. Give back the same that you have been given. But if you had him more than what he headed you, then unfortunately, he's going to have to be given another opportunity. So Pancho looks at this little man, and this little man is like crying and hanging on for dear life, and he's worried what's about to happen. And Pancho looks around this prison-like looking area, and there's thousands and thousands of people that are hitting each other, or this one is doing this to each other, they are hurting each other, but it's a never-ending thing. It's just a cycle that keeps going on and going on and going on. So Pancho then turns to this robot and says, no, I will not do that. The robot says to Pancho, no, you cannot say that you will not do that. Perfect justice must be achieved here.